that academia in America has been dominated by kind of center-left progressivism for well over a century now. A lot of people think that the progressive takeover of academia is something that happened pretty recently. Maybe it happened in the 1960s, or some people seem to think it happened like in the last decade or two or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, if you go back to like the last couple decades of the 19th century, academia was already largely just completely taken over in America by the progressive ideology. You know, people like Woodrow Wilson and Richard T. Ely and all these sorts of characters. And, you know, basically it's overwhelmingly center-left progressive, kind of running from Joe Biden to Bernie Sanders on the spectrum there. And then a small percentage of people who are like outright Marxists, although the outright Marxists are a minority in academia usually. And then there's like, you know, a trifling amount of conservatives and libertarians, far fewer than there are Marxists, you know, and in most cases it's a drop in the bucket. I mean, I happen to have known and worked with a few conservative and libertarian historians in various ways, but they're very much a tiny minority. And this is particularly a problem in the so-called social sciences and humanities, which, you know, some schools place history and social sciences, some place it in humanities. But the reason why this is an especially big problem in those sorts of subjects is that when you're dealing with something like history, or something similar like political science, the ideology of the person doing it is really important to what they're going to produce in terms of lectures and articles and books or whatever is their output, right? Whatever it is they're producing as far as content, because there's no way to do, say, history the way you could do physics, where you could be relatively objective about it and where you could do things like run controlled experiments in order to test particular theories and things. So as a result, there's no way to do that sort of stuff with a topic like history. And so that ends up making it so that a person's ideology significantly is going to mold every step of the process, from the beginning of like, okay, what topics am I going to research in the first place, to what sources am I going to consider consulting and what sources am I going to, you know, not look into. And then of course it continues to influence what you're producing right up to the end, where you're actually writing up your book or your article or whatever you're producing. And so it's a particular problem. I think it's a problem in any discipline if there's way too much ideological kind of conformity and kind of a monocrop ideological environment. But in a discipline like the social sciences, it's especially bad because, you know, when there's not ideological diversity, then there's not checking and balancing going on within the discipline. Mm-hmm. There's you know, nobody to kind of point out the holes and the gaps and the problems with the typical kind of center left historical narrative, who has the credentials, you know, to be a part of the club.